It's the Blue Collar Breakdown! Welcome to the Blue Collar Breakdown! Starting right now!
And welcome to another edition of the Blue Collar Breakdown. My name's Tom Eddlem. I'm the Blue Collar Economist. And for the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be talking about Venezuela and the forever wars. But before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing these last week. The Libertarian Institute published this article, which if you're a libertarian, you're going to say, what is he going socialist? No. But you should read the article. Billionaires, not socialists, are the biggest threat to the free market. And the idea behind it is this, that, we went over it kind of in the, in a past issue of this podcast. The idea is socialism isn't really a threat to America in the sense that they're not nationalizing the means of production. However, other kinds of statism, fascism, cronyism, all of those are very real and present dangers, and billionaires are being, shall we say, subsidized at great rates. I mean, think about it from this perspective. Okay, one of the tidbits I use in the article is this: Elon Musk has taken in more than $36 billion in federal, state, and local subsidies over the years. Most of it is direct taxpayer. I'm not even counting tax breaks. It's taxpayer payments to Elon Musk's businesses, mostly Tesla, mostly for electronic vehicles, carbon tax swaps, and those kind of things that are just direct transfers from consumers, or that make other companies charge more and pay more in the market that are charged off to consumers as well. So $36 billion works out to about $2,300 per American household. So, the old idea that libertarians like to say is that none of your problems are a result of a billionaire. Well, $2,300 per family, that can cause a real problem with a lot of families that are just living on the edge. So read the article, give me your opinion. I would love it. But today I want to talk about not just Venezuela, but the forever wars. Now, right now we have President Trump, and he campaigned on behalf of the idea that, here's what he said to the Libertarian Party National Convention back in May of 2024 when he was campaigning for president. We believe that the job of the United States is not to wage endless regime wars around the globe. Senseless wars, close quote. Okay, that was May 25th, 2024. Before that, on January 6th, 2024, at a rally before the Iowa caucuses, he said, we should, quote, turn the page forever on those foolish, stupid days of never-ending wars. Yet, one of the first things he did when he was president was that he bombed Syria in February. I think it was February 20th. Okay, 25th, 26th. But one of the first things, he's only president on January 20th. He bombs Syria. Now, there's always an excuse, right? Oh, well, it was an Al-Qaeda affiliate. It was actually but here's the thing. The Al-Qaeda leader that was left got welcomed to the White House last month. And Trump was like, oh, this is, this guy's had a rough past, but I think he's doing something. I think he's good. So we're bombing people that we later invite to the White House. That's how President Trump is. It's not a last resort. It's a first resort. Why is he going to invite the Al-Qaeda leader in Syria to the White House and then a couple months earlier bomb Al Qaeda. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, the next country he bombs is Iraq. And again, the excuse is, well, this guy was an ISIS guy and whatever. But in March, he bombs ISIS. Now, when I say first and next, it's not really true because Trump has been bombing a couple of countries all along, and I'm going to get to those countries in a minute. But let's talk about the next country that was in the headlines in June, Iran. And supposedly they were close to a nuclear bomb, or they were working on a nuclear bomb. This is what, of course, and what was the intelligence? Well, the U.S. intelligence assessment was that they weren't close to a nuclear bomb, but we were doing it for Israel, war for Israel. Which, by the way, an Israeli citizen was was President Trump's top donor, gave him almost $100 million. All right, Miriam Edelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson of the Sands Casino fortune, gave Trump about $100 million during the campaign in the form of direct contributions as well as PAC funding that supported his campaign. Because, you can only give a presidential candidate up to, I think it's $5,300 or whatever. It rises a little bit with inflation every 4 years or 2 years. But the idea is the Israeli lobby backed Trump to the hilt, in a way that they didn't even back Kamala Harris, although they would have been fine with Kamala Harris too. And as a result, Trump rewards them with striking Iran on behalf of Israel. Okay. Now the countries that we've been bombing, Trump just started bombing right from the get-go. One of them is Somalia. All right. And in Somalia, here's a story from Al Jazeera. Trump strikes on Somalia have doubled since last year. Why? The idea is that he's ramped up the strikes on Somalia. Now, AnyWar.com had a story that he had broken his own record in the number of bombs dropped in Somalia. Now, keep in mind that we've been bombing Somalia since the 1990s for various excuses. And the record was held by Donald Trump in his first term, and then it went down a bit during the Biden administration. Now, Trump has broken his own record in the number of bombs he's dropped in Somalia. Now we're up to 4 countries. All right. We've talked about Syria, Iran, Iraq, and now Somalia. Oh, but we're only halfway there, my friend. My friends, we are only halfway there, because also we have to do Yemen. Remember, he was bombing wedding parties in Yemen, taking out the whole wedding and saying, oh, well, this was a clan meeting of a terrorist, and it was actually a wedding or a tribal meeting. And he also struck, in this story here at Human Rights Watch talks about it as a war crime, which I'm sure it was. It stopped food distribution. He struck the port. The idea behind it is we've been fighting a proxy war on behalf of Saudi Arabia this time. The Saudi Arabian dictators don't like the Houthis running Yemen, and they've been unable to dislodge them in this decade-long war that they've kind of subsided, just basically given up. But the U.S. government hasn't given up bombing them, and Trump hasn't given up bombing them. He's continued to bomb them, even though he promised to end the senseless forever wars. We're continuing the 5th country, Yemen, of forever wars. Okay, but again, I'm not done. I'm not even close to being done. All right. Let me see. Iran. Let's talk about this one. We're bombing in the Caribbean too. Now, you can argue that we're bombing 3 countries in the Caribbean, 4 countries in the Caribbean: Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela. But the Ecuadorians who were bombed were basically on Colombian boats. So let's just call it 3 countries. All right. And here's Colombian fisherman killed in the U.S. boat strike. This was a couple of months ago. And his family has filed a lawsuit saying, hey, it was just a fisherman. Why is the United States doing the drone strikes there? And in Venezuela, of course, we're doing that, and they're fueling war crimes charges. Are they legal? Well, I mean, if you look at the U.S. Constitution, who is responsible for determining whether or not the United States military is called out to action? Well, piracy on the high seas and terrorism is, under the U.S. Constitution, a responsibility of Congress. War, under the U.S. Constitution, is a responsibility of Congress. Making rules for the regulation of the government and the government of the land and naval forces under the U.S. Constitution is a responsibility of Congress. Funding the military is a responsibility of Congress. The founding fathers sought to put both the purse and the sword in the hands of Congress, not in the president. And yet, President Trump has asserted the ability to basically bomb any country he wants. And, we see here that this is a story from, I believe it's from today. Let me just check and see. Nope, yesterday, Tuesday, December 2nd. Trump says U.S. will begin land strikes on Venezuela very soon. So we're beginning the bombing of Venezuela, not just at sea, but on Venezuelan soil proper. Although technically, any ship flying the Venezuelan flag would be Venezuelan territory, just as we would consider any bombing of a U.S. ship, U.S. flagged ship in the international waters, an attack on the United States. We saw the bombing of the USS Cole as a terrorist attack on the United States, not just, it's in international waters. It's not an attack on the United States. Of course, we see it as an attack on the United States. And interestingly enough, the president of Colombia today said that, and this is a quote, to threaten our sovereignty is to declare war. He's talking about Trump and the attacks on the boats in international waters. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if I have the story here. This is it. I thought this was kind of interesting. The narrative that the Trump administration has tried to sell us is that these guys are the worst of the worst drug traffickers. They're terrorists. They're, obviously not from Colombia. They're not Trinidad, but they're the worst drug lords. They're terrorists. They're whatever. And there were some survivors of a drug boat attack last month. And what did the United States do to these dangerous terrorists? Well, we sent them back to Colombia and Ecuador. And in Colombia and Ecuador, we knew this in advance, by the way. They were freed, and the Colombians and Ecuadorians complained about attacks on their boats and said that these guys were just fishermen. Now, if they were actually terrorists and they were dangerous to the United States, why would they give them back? Wouldn't they take them to the United States and try them for crimes? Or in the case of Pete Hegseth, or as many people have started to call him, Pete Hegseth, as in the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Hegseth. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, and probably appropriately changed from defense to war, because we are pursuing aggressive war with Venezuela and a number of other countries. He did the double tap on the boat in Venezuela recently, where they killed, I forget the number, but there were 10 or 11 or 12 people on the boat. They did a missile strike. There were 2 people left over who were alive. They were clinging to the boat, as survivors, and they did a double tap and killed those rather than just, the boat is obviously disabled. Rather than just take them prisoner and charge them with crimes, these dangerous terrorists, they just decided to murder them. They're violating every law and norm, whether it's the international naval laws going back centuries. Basically there's 2 ways to do it, right? You could do, well, actually, maybe even 3. There's military code, which is a helpless enemy cannot be attacked. You can take them prisoner, but you can't take them. Okay. So under military law, it would be a war crime. There's international maritime law, where you're not allowed to do that either. So, like for instance, the Coast Guard or whatever, they wouldn't be allowed to do that, and that would be a civil crime under international law and under American law. I mean, the U.S. Constitution talks about the law of nations, and what it means is international maritime law, which was then in place with Britain and some of the other European powers, and that would be, again, killing people who are helpless without giving them a trial first was a violation of that law of nations. And then finally, there's civilian law, right? And if you were to commit a drug crime or whatever, or terrorism crime, you'd be arrested by the DEA or the FBI in the United States, and you would have the FBI just can't shoot you because they think you're a terrorist. They have to arrest you if they can and bring you to trial. And so whether you use military law, international maritime law, or civilian law, either way, it's a murder. And if it's a military law, it's a war crime. In this case, I would say it's murder, not a war crime, because this is not military. The U.S. Congress has not authorized military strikes. The U.S. Congress is the one who determines whether it's military. So Pete Hegseth is not a war criminal. He's a murderer. And that would go for all the admirals and generals who authorized it as well. Regardless of the fact that they're in the military, I suppose they could be prosecuted for murder under the military code, but the military code allows for murder too. Soldiers that kill each other without orders or without authorization, or if they're illegally done, they can do that too. And by the way, there have been international trials of soldiers and sailors who have killed people, helpless prisoners in the water. There was a particular example during World War II of a German U-boat whose officers ordered the machine gunning of sailors that had fled the boat that they had torpedoed, and these guys were issued, if not many years in prison, maybe even the death penalty. So there's international precedent for this kind of thing as well. Okay, now where am I? Let's see. One thing I want to mention before I get too late. I don't want to forget this. Next week, I will not be live. Hey, Chuck and Money. We will not be live. I'm going to do one of Kyle Anzalone's podcast, so you just definitely want to check him out. Let me just make a general point here. My focus, although I've written about international politics and in the sense of in foreign policy and war for decades, the focus of this podcast is going to continue to be largely economic. Hey, I have a degree in economics, and the way I see it is I'm not going to be able to. You can see the crack in my voice. I still have that cough from that cold where I missed the podcast 2 weeks ago. I don't see myself beating Jason Ditz of Anywar.com or Kyle Anzalone of the Libertarian Institute or Scott Horton of the Libertarian Institute and everything else. I don't see that. I don't see myself beating them on foreign policy. I'm going to stick to my training and what I've focused on in economics. But we're on the precipice of war with Venezuela, and I thought, I'll cover that. It's in the news. And here's the thing. The poll numbers that have come out recently, I looked, I saw them. It's about 3-1 against war with Venezuela. It's like 74% against and 24 for. And it's a little bit lower for Republicans and a little bit higher for Democrats and independents, but it's not, it's overwhelming. It's more than 2-1, even for Republicans. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, this is the people are waking up. There's this fracturing of MAGA. MAGA started out as being this anti-war, let's stop the forever wars coalition, and look at this. We're making progress." And what I have to say is basically this: the polling doesn't matter. I mean, right now, if you look at polling for the Democrats and the Republicans are. They have negative polling numbers by 13%, and the Democrats have negative polling numbers by 23%. So the positive for Democrats, I think, is like 34%, and the negative is like 56, 57. So the overwhelming majority of people don't like Democrats today, even though Trump is screwing everything up. And the overwhelming number of people also don't like Republicans. And the point I'm going to make, and one of the pieces that I don't have yet in the queue, I haven't finished it, I am going to submit it to the Libertarian Institute soon, is that the only poll that really matters is the poll every 2 years. And even really, come on, I mean, did the vote in November of last year really matter that much? We had a choice between Kamala Harris, who would do whatever the deep state wants, and Trump, who said he wasn't going to do what the deep state wants, and now is doing everything the deep state wants. That was the choice we had. And the people voted better in the sense that they chose the one who said he wasn't going to do the forever wars. They chose the one who said he wanted to lower taxes and pay off the national debt and do all of these nice things. But he didn't do any of them. I mean, he did one thing. He freed Russ Ulbricht. That's it. And, he's once again proven Horton's law. Scott Horton had this law that the only promises politicians keep are their bad promises. And this is true with Donald Trump, with the exception of Russ Ulbricht. He's cracked down on immigration, which is not good. In my opinion, as a libertarian, he has increased the deficit. He's increased overall federal spending, mostly for the military. And he has increased the wars from, I don't know, how many was Biden doing? He's probably doing 5 or 6, but now we're bombing 8 countries. He even beat Obama. Obama bombed 7 countries. Trump beat it in 1 year. Obama bombed 7 countries in 8 years. Trump bombed 8 countries in 1 year. Now, Trump hasn't dropped as many bombs as Obama, but give him time. Let's see. Where am I at? I got distracted. I'm going to be on Kyle Anzalone's podcast next Wednesday. I don't know if it's recorded live or it'll be, if it'll be released a day or two later, but I will be doing Kyle Anzalone's podcast, and you should be watching Kyle Anzalone's podcast as well, because if you want to be up to date on foreign policy and what's going on in the world and foreign policy, his you can watch the Kyle Anzalone show, which I think is the one I'm going to be on, but you should also watch his other podcast, which is Conflicts of Interest, and this one's more the foreign policy emphasis. Although, to tell you the truth, both of his podcasts focus a lot on foreign policy. I mean, that's Kyle's specialty, kind of like mine is economics and domestic policy. Okay. Wow, I really got through that. But I want to make a couple of quick points before I go. I'll make this a quick podcast. The 8 countries that Trump is bombing, and I didn't even mention the proxy wars that he's funding. I mean, we're still funding Ukraine and keeping that war going. We are still funding Israel's war on Gaza, which, although there's a ceasefire, Israel continues to have bombings almost daily in Gaza, even though the Gazans are not striking back, or hardly at all. He's doing that. And his followers are talking about, a Nobel Peace Prize for his proposal for peace in Ukraine, which was rejected by Russia outright, right from the outset. It just strikes me as it's kind of like in December of 1939, giving Hitler or Stalin a Nobel Peace Prize for signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and keeping peace between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. I mean, they were both invading country after country. Germany between 1936 and 1939 had invaded Austria and Czechoslovakia and Poland and Hungary. And, I believe they'd taken control of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union had invaded even more countries. They'd invaded Romania and taken Moldavia, what is current day Moldavia. They had invaded Poland and taken half of Poland. They'd invaded Finland and got their butts kicked. They had invaded Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, although that was actually in 1940. But I mean, they'd drawn a map and basically divided up Europe between the two of them. And that's basically giving Trump the Nobel Peace Prize is kind of like giving those guys, Hitler and Stalin, a Peace Prize for the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. I mean, you don't get a Nobel Peace Prize if you increase military spending and you bomb 8 countries in 1 year. You just don't. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that because Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize and then 7 countries a year. But you shouldn't. I mean, it's maybe that's the change in the Nobel Peace Prize. It used to be. I remember back in the 80s, John McManus of the John Birch Society used to say, someone gets the Nobel Peace Prize. I always think, oh, I didn't know he was a communist, and I laughed about it. It was kind of a funny joke because typically they were on the left, but now you almost say, well, they got the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, I didn't know he was a warmonger because Obama got it, and I don't know. It's just and of course it's Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela who got it this year. She I was really rooting for her to be legit, but I just can't. She's the head of Vente Venezuela, which is the opposition party in Venezuela. That's probably the closest there is to a libertarian party in Venezuela. And she's a very popular figure. I wanted her to be a real legitimate opposition figure. But I always had this sneaking suspicion in the back of my mind. Well, she was educated at Yale. And I know that the CIA, going back to the 40s, started recruiting people at Ivy Leagues. And she also took money, not a lot, like I think it was like $70,000 or $80,000, but in Venezuela, that's a lot of money, from the National Endowment for Democracies, which is a CIA cutout. And she started calling for the U.S. to invade and for Trump to, I don't know, it's just, and there was something else she did. Oh, the fact that she won the Nobel Peace Prize right there makes me suspicious that the international community is out with, on her side, which is another suspicion. So I don't know. I just don't see it. One last point. I keep saying I'm going to close, and I am. If Trump invades 8 countries or bombs 8 countries in 1 year, it kind of gives you a different view of America on the world stage. I mean, think about it. How many countries did Germany bomb in the early 1930s? How many countries did Russia bomb in the early 1930s or up until they were invaded in Operation Barbarossa in 1941? I mean, they 5, 6. I mean, Trump bombed 8 countries in 1 year. In 1 year, Mexico, and we've bombed Mexico and Colombia and Venezuela, Yemen, Somalia, Iran, Iraq, Syria, all those countries bombed this year. And it makes you think, okay, what was Vladimir Putin's complaint before he invaded Ukraine? He said, NATO is an imminent threat to Russia, and we will not allow NATO to come up to our border, and we will not allow Ukraine to come into NATO. And it sort of makes you think, crap, the United States is a threat to Russia. We are a threat. Now, that doesn't justify Putin invading Ukraine. Putin's a vicious dictator. He's an old KGB thug. He's a bad guy. But it doesn't make us the good guys. And it doesn't make NATO the good guys. NATO is the bad guy. Just as Ukraine is the bad guy. They're all bad guys in this. There are no good guys. This is like Reservoir Dogs, or everybody's a bad guy. Okay? That's the way governments are. And it gives you, but it gives you another thought of, oh, well, Russia actually has real reason to fear the United States, because when we come in, we might aggressively take over a country with a bad dictator like, say, Muammar Gaddafi, and turn it into a basket case that was way worse than before. Because Libya today has chattel slavery. It's a disaster. Whereas under Gaddafi, yeah, it was bad. He was a terrible person. He killed people. He censored the press. He did all kinds of bad things. But the scale of human misery today in Libya is way worse than it was in 2006 and 7. And that's what the Russians fear with NATO coming into Ukraine. And you could kind of understand that, because NATO went into Libya. And a lot of countries are talking about, I mean, the Libyan solution. I mean, that when we invaded Iran, one of the things that the Israeli dictator, the Israeli leader, the very corrupt Benjamin Netanyahu said is, we need a Libyan solution in Iran. So what they want to do is they want a broken state in Iran. And, that, and the United States backed him up on it. All right. I have said my piece. Just want to remind you, one, if you really want very detailed expert foreign policy, definitely listen to Scott Horton's show. Listen to Kyle Angelone's show. Kyle Angelone's Conflict of Interest. We'll get back to economics. Next week's podcast will be pre-recorded because I got to do Kyle's show in the late afternoon, and then I'm going to a Libertarian Party meeting in the evening. So I'm not going to be able to do this show live at 8:30, but you will have a podcast. It'll just get loaded up at 8:30. So definitely look forward to that. And of course, as always, make sure you like, you subscribe, you share, all that stuff. Spread the word about this podcast, and we'll see you next week.
In America, we have to party fun. We have the stupid